Welcome to Preparing for the Unexpected. I'm your host, Alex Fullick, and as always, we like to talk about things related to cyber, business continuity, operational resilience, anything that helps you, your organization, or your community plan for, respond to, and overcome adverse situations. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, please feel free. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am the only Alex Fullick there. I'm really easy to find, and I do respond to everything I get. Today, we're going to be talking about cyber exercises, and I'd like to welcome to the show today, Fiona Raymond-Cox. Fiona, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here. And for those that don't know me, maybe I'll just do a quick introduction.
Sure.
I founded Raymond-Cox Consulting back in 2010. I had led PricewaterhouseCoopers business continuity practice in Hong Kong. And then in 2004, moved to the US and ultimately led immediately prior to founding my business. I worked for Marsh, the big insurance brokers. And so I serve on one of the ISO technical committees, specifically 292. I got involved when I wasn't very keen on ISO 22301. And if you don't like something, you have to step up and do something about it. And I've been working on revisions to 22301 and the development of some of the new standards and technical specifications ever since. In fact, leading one of those projects right now on a technical specification around business continuity and recovery strategies and solutions. I also was the Burma recipient, I should say, of the Burma 2020 Award of Excellence. So that's a little bit about me.
What's Burma?
Burma, it's a business association of resilience professionals started in the Bay Area and now has tentacles across the country. And, I think a couple of members also internationally.
Oh, wonderful. Well, congratulations.
Years ago, we spoke about the organization and how to build these resilience associations for practitioners.
Nice. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
And as I say, we're going to talk about tabletop exercises and how they've evolved. That'll be our first segment. So specifically focusing on cyber, how have tabletop exercises evolved?
Okay, so I'm going to start by saying, I'm going to just look at, let's say, the last 10 years, because I'm sure some companies have been performing exercises for longer than that, and others sort of fresh on their minds. But I thought I'd give an example, perhaps two. So back in 2014, I was working with a client, and they, with me, decided we would conduct a tabletop exercise. And what we did is we brought together members of the corporate crisis management team, the computer incident response team, and department recovery, business recovery teams, as well as IT, to simulate a response to a disaster. And specifically the three exercise groups participated on parallel paths, but in different locations, each geared to addressing issues specific to their roles and responsibilities. The scenario that we used was a malware situation impacting payroll only. And so I think what we were really trying to do through that exercise, it was probably a 3 or 4 hour exercise, was trying to educate the participants on what a malware incident is really about. Mm-hmm. So that was one example. The next year, 2015, I designed and facilitated an exercise for 2 professional member associations made up of business resiliency professionals and those with responsibility for the protection of US critical infrastructure. And that exercise was based on a scenario in which a company website had been defaced. Now, in this instance, it was very much a fictitious company. This was people from, like you and me, who get together and sort of really sort of think through, well, how would they respond? The idea being the main objective of that exercise was to provide, I think, an educational experience to the participants and encourage them to actually go back to their organizations and plan for similar incidents. So it was a little bit of a funny situation in that it wasn't actually an organization that we were planning for. It was preparing people in our line of business to help educate them so they felt comfortable to go back and do something similar within their own organization. So getting people to start thinking about a cyber incident. And I think what I probably am driving at here is in these examples, the idea of basing a scenario on a cyber incident was probably in large part being driven by me, because I felt it was important. You know, fast track to today, awareness of cyber has grown exponentially, and companies are, requesting an exercise to be conducted based on a cyber-related incident.
That I can't help but pose the question then, is cyber driving the change in some of these tabletop or in many tabletop exercises now?
Yeah, I think that's definitely what's happening, is that people are coming to us more often than not and saying, we need to conduct a cyber exercise. Can you help? And so, and I think the reason for that is, ransomware and other cyber related incidents or risks simply weren't top of mind 10 years ago, like they are today. So I think that that's really been a big driver. I'm not saying it's the only type of scenario that we're doing, but it's significantly a cyber incident of some sort, whether it's ransomware, a data breach, or other, that's all related. That's really what's come to the forefront of people's planning, I think, these days.
Well, you probably remember the days, I know I do, where people were doing tabletop exercises based on there's a fire, there's a flood, earthquake. But now it is really focused on the technical side of things.
Absolutely. That's something I was thinking I would share. I think it's there's a big shift to more disaster recovery focused exercises. And I'd say, perhaps what's driving all of this is, maybe I'm going to give you a couple of statistics. In this year, 2024, the World Economic Forum published its global risk report, and I'm going to make sure I give you the right numbers. So they state that the global cost of cybercrime is forecast to jump to 23.84 trillion by 2027. Wow. That's dollars, which is up from 8.44 trillion only 2 years ago. So a jump of 15.4 trillion is pretty incredible over a 5-year period. Something that's, is making executives sit up and probably shaking their boots a bit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think, so I think what's happened is that as a result of this becoming such a huge issue, is that it's now easier to get the right people in the room. When you're conducting an exercise or when we're putting an exercise together. So we're getting people from the business and we're getting people from IT and we're getting crisis management team together. And I know that's going to be a topic.
We're going to talk about that part.
Yes, but the point is that we're getting more people in the room than we ever did for these cyber-related tabletop exercises. I think that's a fundamental shift in planning, and long overdue, to be honest.
I agree, because many tabletop exercises, it would be the business continuity people and a spattering of this and that who end up attending. Senior management skips out on it. IT isn't there. It's a business continuity thing. We don't need to be there. But an earthquake can impact your IT as well. So can a fire. Depending on how it plays out, everybody could be involved. But I guess when it comes to a cyber exercise, it's almost a known. We're all going to be impacted if there's a cyber incident, right?
Exactly, exactly. So I think, I take my hat off to the client who back in 2014 gathered this group of, cross-functional teams between then and now. Most organizations, but not all, are trying to bring, more of this cross-functional team together. So, integrating the incident or crisis management team with the cybersecurity response and business recovery is key. I don't think there's been much change in terms of, we know that out of these exercises, understanding people's roles and responsibilities is absolutely key. And those are the different teams, and that is also important. And the outcome of exercising is to improve planning processes. I mean, that has to be the outcome of why you do this, and to find vulnerabilities and close gaps. Anyway, so I think that that's been a shift. And also this, there's a huge focus these days, because a cyber exercise has such an impact on reputational risk, financial losses, reputational risk, that messaging has come to the forefront in terms of the crisis communications in a way that I think people overlooked previously.
I want to jump on a couple of things that you mentioned and tie them together. When the beginning, when you gave us two examples, you used the word educate people in both examples. And with what you just said as well, there is focus and the desire to improve plans and processes. Do you think part of the current evolution of tabletops is not just to identify and increase the usability and the viability of plans and processes, but also people now, where people seem to be an afterthought before, and now it seems with cyber, people are more involved.
Oh,
And we're
without
focusing on
doubt.
people so they get more knowledgeable of what's going on.
Absolutely. I think in the past it was very, I mean, my first example was, I think, probably a bit more unique in that it was this cross-functional team, but many times there were exercises that were very siloed. You would test a business continuity team, you might test a crisis management team. The IT folks were behind the scenes testing, bringing up a system in one place, doing a failover, probably at a weekend, so it didn't impact production, the working day, those sorts of things. Now I see there's much more of a holistic view when they're doing exercises, but not always. I think there's definitely room for improvement still. It's definitely, it's evolved, but it's still an evolution, and I think there's still more that can be done.
Yeah, I agree. It's just, I see the word people capabilities a lot more associated with testing than there used to be, where it would be just, we're testing our plan based around a scenario. Now it's, let's exercise it. So you're making it a living, breathing. And then when you're talking about people, you're giving them the opportunity to learn and getting rid of that old pass fail mentality.
Oh, I don't think I've ever used that pass fail in any exercise, or maybe on the IT side, if they weren't able to bring the application up at the alternate location, well, that didn't work. But I think the purpose of an exercise is to reveal if there's holes somewhere. It's, if people feel it's a pass fail, they're not going, they're not going to engage in the same way. I think it's much better to say take it as an opportunity, actually.
Mhm.
It's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to reveal. Those are fundamental aspects of any exercise in my mind.
I always look at your testing plans and processes, equipment and things like that, but you're exercising people. You're exercising their minds, and let them contribute and see things that maybe you can't see when you write it down.
Yeah, so here's one thing that I think is a really big change I haven't addressed is when we were 10 years ago running exercises, generally everybody had to be in a room, physically in a room. Particularly a tabletop exercise, even if you were geographically distanced, like those 3 exercise groups that I described, they were all in rooms. Well, that's definitely not the case now. Most exercises that we're running are a combination of physical, so people being in a room, and others being remote. And I think it's really interesting. The dynamics change a lot when you have this hybrid approach. And then we did an exercise, was it this year? No, maybe last year, where everybody was remote, including us as facilitators. So that's a very different shift. And then you're having to use technology in a way that you haven't in the past. And maybe we'll get on to talk about that in a little bit. But I think it's a fundamental shift in the way things happen. So in the past, we'd have teams of people who would get together in the room. They weren't necessarily the right people, but it was because they were physically there. Now it's like we can put together the right teams because we're not concerned whether they're physically present during the exercise.
Yeah, I remember when it was, the thought was, what do we do if people aren't available and they're not here? Well, now that's the norm. They're actually not there.
Absolutely.
They're at home, or they could be in a hotel, or wherever the case may be. That's
Yeah.
more realistic than having everybody in a room, magically within 30 minutes. Like
Yeah, exactly. And I think I go back to why the fun, why there's been such a shift. There are masses of reports out there, not just that World Economic Forum report that talk about cyber risk as being like the number one concern globally. Actually, the World Economic Forum report of this year put it as the 4th global risk behind misinformation, disinformation, extreme weather events, and societal polarization, where there's another report that I was looking at today. I'm going to look at the Alliance Risk Barometer has cyber incidents as the leading risk, and by that ransomware, data breaches, and IT disruptions. And that's their number one global concern. So it depends what you read as to where in the pecking order, but the reality is it's very top of mind for most people.
And on that note, we've come to the end of our first segment. We are talking about cyber exercises today with Fiona Raymond-Cox, and we will be right back. If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.